Alright, you guys, so we're going to talk about throat chakra alchemy, okay? It's been a little while since I posted my last video because I wanted you guys to really soak in what I had just given you. So here we have a little doll, okay? It's just like a little wooden doll that represents us. This UV light right here that's projecting off of the doll, that's going to represent our soul. So as you can see, it's not creating a shadow, all right? Even if I were to lift the light, there wouldn't be a shadow that's projected off of the UV light of our soul. Now, through Antojai, like our soul is a spectrum of UV light. So our soul is completely whole up until there's a moment where we become intelligent and conscious of our own intelligence. When this ends up happening, we start defining the world and we start putting the world into positive and negative, up and down, duality basically. As that happens, we end up developing more and more and more separation. And even as we come closer into the light, we start seeing that as we put our focus in one direction, then starts coming the shadow. Now before we even step there, we are not fragmented. We are completely whole. We understand that the cosmos is this energetic cycle, and this is before we even become aware of the human experience. So you're born already understanding the cosmos. It's the human experience or any alien experience, because if you lived on the third dimension, you're going to experience this on other planets. As the world starts to condition you and tell you things, you start having your perspective of the world, and slowly you can see that shadow start manipulating itself. As trauma becomes more and more real into your life, that shadow starts really taking form. As you start experiencing and creating your own understanding of the cosmos, it becomes even more solid. As you continue to live your life, and if you don't deal with your stuff, that shadow becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it seems bigger than you, and then now you're carrying and slugging that shadow around. So how do we actually take that shadow and start bringing it back and back and back and back and back in until we've reached the understanding of our soul again? How do you do that? Well, first of all, if we know that trauma and culture ends up creating it, the first thing you have to do is understand, okay, maybe you have problems with your sexuality. Maybe, you were told sex was disgusting, that you're not supposed to have sex before marriage, or maybe that you're not supposed to be attracted to the type of people that you're attracted to. That's what created the shadow, all right? So then you have to look at the original file that got installed. Maybe it was your parents. Maybe it was an experience with someone that made you feel that way. Well, all right, so this is the experience. Now it's the shadow. It's a huge part of the shadow. That was given to me by someone else's perception. How do I actually feel about it? Well, it makes me feel complete. It makes me feel whole. But wait, they did make me feel really, really, really bad about it. Am I sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Yes, of course. Why wouldn't I be doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm not hurting anyone while I'm doing it. Yeah, but do you remember this one experience after you had that original experience that solidified even more this shadow? Yeah, but that was in the past. The past doesn't exist because time isn't real. Yeah, but do you remember how someone was really mean to you over this subject matter and you just absolutely hated them and you wanted them to just like really suffer and become wholeheartedly one with karma? Yeah, but I totally forgive them. What's the point of me not forgiving them when that creates karma? But no. I'm one with myself. I understand my soul. Your shadow, that's how it works, that your shadow is essentially your subconscious. So when you start really being conscious of what you're doing, your shadow is going to try to expand and take over and defeat you and try to give you reasons as to why you should feel the shadow and experience it, because now the shadow is a part of reality and the shadow doesn't want to go anywhere. So it's going to do everything in its power to fight you from making it non-existent. So it wants to be like this. It wants to keep your soul separated. So this is where the less authentic you are, the bigger a shadow is going to get created, until the point that it's so big, it encompasses you with all the shadow possible. A shadow that you won't even realize is there. The more authentic you are with yourself, the more real you are with yourself, about your existence, about your truth, about your reality, there is no shadow to really deal with. When you use your words and you spellcast, man, I hate this person. Man, my life sucks. Man, nothing ever seems to go my way. I'm not magical. I'll never be psychic. You keep creating the shadow more and more and more. But if you stop using self-limited beliefs, those words that we're telling ourselves on the regular, what we're thinking in our head, the shadow becomes less and less and less. Remember, when you use your words internally or externally, you're what? You're spellcasting. When you're afraid of the afterworld, if you're afraid of death, we're not saying that we're embracing death to the point where we want to hurt ourselves. We're saying that the afterlife is another world. When you're afraid of the afterlife, you create the shadow, you create the shadow, you create the shadow, you create the shadow, because it's separate. When you believe in duality, you create the shadow, 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 because you're not whole. When you believe that you are a fragmented soul and you need your twin flame, you become less and less and less and less in alignment with your ultimate power. There's a shadow still there. You're not whole with your soul. But if you say that you're whole and you don't need your twin flame, and that you don't hate people, and that you understand that the cosmos is just a relation of yourself, and that everything in reality is a mirror, and everything happens for a reason, and that you can manifest whatever it is that you need, you see how your soul starts coming back and back to the point where you two are one, and eventually you get to an understanding of who you really are at a soul level. And then the shadow itself isn't even a reality for you. Then all of a sudden you legitly just exist inside of your soul. And this is the ultimate spectrum you want to exist in harmony with your soul. No shadow, just truth. When you can align yourself with this, you can then start defeating a bunch of other issues that you may have been dealing with your entire life. The first thing is understanding how your shadow works, which we just described to you now. Understanding that just because you ignore your shadow doesn't mean that it's not there. That your shadow right now, if you've never worked on your shadow, is there. For some of us, it's really big. For some of us, it's super small. For some of us, it's pretty much not there. We just have to actually confront a few things about it. This is what your shadow equates to. You ignore it, the more you ignore your problems, the more you ignore dealing with them, the bigger it's going to get, to a point where it's so big, you don't recognize it anymore. Further and further away from your soul. The trick here is taking all the alchemy that I've ever taught you, and maybe some other alchemy that you've learned across space and time that complements whatever I've given you, so that your shadow can no longer take the best of you, that you can always have it in check, just like this. And at some point, you'll become one of those people that their shadow just doesn't exist anymore. This is Ascended Master Antojai sending you so much love throughout Chakra Alchemy with the shadow.